May 2, 2025. A mother stands before a wall of news cameras, her face contorted in what appears to be unbearable anguish. Malia Brooks Murray's voice cracks as she makes a desperate plea to anyone who might be watching. Her 6-year-old daughter Lily and 4-year-old son Jack have vanished from their rural Nova Scotia home without a trace. The tears streaming down her cheeks catch the harsh glare of camera lights as she begs for her babies to come home safely. She clutches a worn stuffed animal that belonged to one of the children, her hands trembling as she speaks about how much she misses them, how she can't bear another night without them tucked safely in their beds. The world watches this scene unfold and sees exactly what Malia wants them to see. A mother experiencing every parent's worst nightmare. A woman shattered by the sudden, inexplicable disappearance of her children. The image is powerful, heartbreaking, impossible to look away from. News outlets replay the footage endlessly. Social media erupts with sympathy and support. Thousands of people share her tearful appeals, adding their own prayers and hopes that Lily and Jack will be found alive and unharmed. The collective compassion of strangers pours out toward this grieving mother who seems to be living through unimaginable horror. Before we go any further into this shocking case, I need you to do something right now. Subscribe to the Case Files Collective and hit that notification bell. We're about to reveal evidence that mainstream media won't touch, information that will completely change how you see this case. If you want the full truth about what happened to Lily and Jack Sullivan, you need to be subscribed. And while you're at it, smash that like button because your engagement helps push this story to people who need to see it. Drop a comment and let me know where you're watching from today. I want to know who's following this case with us. But in a stark room far from the cameras and the public's sympathetic gaze, a group of seasoned investigators watches that same footage with very different eyes. They see the way her tears seem to flow on command, turning on when the cameras start rolling and mysteriously drying up during breaks in filming. They notice how her emotional displays follow predictable, almost mechanical patterns rather than the messy, unpredictable waves of genuine grief. They catch the subtle verbal slips when she speaks about her children in past tense before awkwardly correcting herself to present tense, as if some part of her subconscious already knows these children aren't coming home. They observe the performance of a woman who is acting the role of devastated mother rather than actually being one. For 7 long months, the investigation into the disappearance of Lily and Jack Sullivan followed what seemed like an obvious trail. All roads pointed to Daniel Martell, Malia's boyfriend and the children's stepfather. His computer revealed disturbing internet searches about missing children cases and how bodies decompose in wilderness areas. His financial records exposed a family drowning in crushing debt with no way out. Witnesses came forward describing his complaints about supporting children who weren't biologically his resentment of the financial burden they represented. He had lied repeatedly to investigators about his whereabouts and activities during the critical hours when the children disappeared. Every piece of evidence seemed to confirm what everyone naturally assumed, that if something terrible had happened to these innocent children, the stepfather must be responsible. But new evidence has emerged that fundamentally changes everything investigators thought they understood about this case. Evidence that shifts the focus away from Daniel Martell entirely and places it squarely on the one person everyone instinctively wanted to believe, the biological mother. Evidence suggesting that Malia Brooks Murray knows far more than she has ever admitted about what really happened to her children on that spring morning. Evidence pointing to a truth so disturbing that it challenges our deepest assumptions about maternal love and the bond between mother and child. What if we've all been looking in the completely wrong direction this entire time? What if the person truly responsible for whatever happened to Lily and Jack Sullivan has been hiding in plain sight, playing the role of grieving, desperate mother while investigators focus their attention elsewhere? What if the real monster in this story has been wearing a mother's mask all along, manipulating public sympathy and evading justice while 2 children remain missing and a stepfather bears suspicion for crimes he may not have committed? May 1, 2025. 2:25 in the afternoon. Security cameras at a Dollarama store capture the last independent sighting of Lily and Jack Sullivan. 6-year-old Lily walks down an aisle holding her mother's hand, her blonde hair pulled back in a ponytail. 4-year-old Jack trails behind, distracted by colorful toys lining the shelves, his small dinosaur backpack bouncing with each step. Malia Brooks Murray guides them through the store while Daniel Martell pushes a shopping cart. To anyone watching, they look like an ordinary family running ordinary errands on an ordinary Thursday afternoon. This 17-minute shopping trip represents the last moment anyone outside the family can definitively confirm seeing these children alive. Store employees remember nothing remarkable about the visit. The children weren't crying or showing distress. Malia and Daniel weren't arguing. They purchased household items, paid in cash, and left at 2:42 in the afternoon. Security footage shows them loading purchases into Daniel's pickup truck, buckling the children into their seats, and driving away toward their isolated property 15 miles outside of town. The family arrived home at approximately 4:15 in the afternoon. The property sits at the end of a long gravel driveway, surrounded by dense forest on 3 sides, with the nearest neighbor nearly half a mile away. It's the kind of isolation that offers privacy and peace, but also the kind of isolation where terrible things can happen without anyone hearing or seeing. The afternoon passed in what appeared to be normal family activities. The children played outside in the mild spring weather. Malia prepared dinner while Daniel worked on minor household repairs. The baby napped and then woke fussy, requiring attention. It was the mundane rhythm of family life, unremarkable and routine. At 6 o'clock in the evening, something shifted. Daniel's mother Janie called asking for help with a broken cabinet door. He left the main house and walked across the property to assist her. This 45-minute window represents the first critical period investigators have identified. During this time, Malia Brooks Murray was completely alone in the main house with all 3 children. There were no witnesses to observe what was happening inside those walls. No one to see or hear if something went wrong. No one to verify her account of what transpired during those unsupervised minutes. When Daniel returned shortly before 7 o'clock, everything seemed perfectly normal. The older children were in their shared bedroom, playing with toys or watching something on a tablet. Malia was in the kitchen finishing dinner preparations. Nothing appeared amiss or concerning. The family ate dinner together. Daniel described the children eating chicken nuggets and vegetables, seeming happy and healthy, showing no signs of illness or distress. After dinner, they watched television in the living room for a while before Malia announced it was approaching bedtime. At approximately 9:00 in the evening, Malia told Daniel she would handle the bedtime routine by herself that night. She specifically instructed him to stay downstairs, saying she didn't need his help. This wasn't particularly unusual. Malia often managed bedtime for Lily and Jack while Daniel dealt with the baby or handled other tasks. He thought nothing of it. He settled on the couch with his phone while Malia took both children upstairs to their shared bedroom. This second critical window, approximately 30 minutes when Malia was alone upstairs with Lily and Jack behind a closed bedroom door, has become central to investigators' theory of what really happened. Daniel remained downstairs the entire time, never going up to check on the children. He never saw them again after Malia led them up those stairs. When she came back down around 9:30, she told him the children were tucked into bed and had fallen asleep quickly. He accepted this at face value. He had no reason to doubt her. He had no reason to verify they were peacefully sleeping. The house settled into silence as darkness fell over the isolated property. Daniel Martell told investigators he and Malia spent the evening watching television, scrolling through phones, talking about mundane things. Around 11 o'clock, they went to bed with baby Meadow sleeping in a bassinet in their room. Daniel claimed he fell asleep quickly, exhausted from the day. He had no idea that nightmare had already begun, or that it was continuing while he slept peacefully beside the woman who may have murdered her own children. Between 2 o'clock and 3 o'clock in the morning, Janie Mackenzie woke to sounds from the main house. Furniture being dragged across floors. Heavy objects being moved. The distinct scraping and thumping that indicated someone was awake and engaged in strenuous physical activity. Janie assumed it was her son Daniel, known for having trouble sleeping and doing odd projects at strange hours. She thought nothing of it and drifted back to sleep, unaware those sounds might represent something far more sinister. But what if those sounds weren't Daniel at all? What if he was sleeping peacefully upstairs, completely unaware? What if Malia Brooks Murray was moving things in darkness, preparing bodies for disposal, staging a scene, cleaning up evidence? The main house is distant enough from Janie's building that in darkness, there would be no way to visually confirm who was making those sounds. Janie made an assumption, but assumptions aren't facts. At approximately 5:30 in the morning, another neighbor heard a vehicle engine idling for an extended period. Not just starting and driving away, but running in place for at least 10 to 15 minutes. Unusual enough for that early hour to be noticed and remembered. Investigators initially assumed it was Daniel's truck with him behind the wheel. But that assumption deserves reconsideration. Malia has a valid driver's license. She had complete access to Daniel's truck. The keys hung on a hook near the front door where either could grab them. While Daniel slept upstairs, Malia could have taken those keys and used the truck herself. She could have been behind the wheel during that early morning period. She could have been making a trip to dispose of something while her partner slept with no knowledge of her activities. By 10:01 in the morning, Malia was calling 911 to report her children missing. Her voice on that recording was surprisingly calm and controlled for someone whose children had supposedly just vanished. Most parents are completely hysterical, barely able to communicate through panic. But Malia sounded like someone reading from a carefully prepared script, hitting emotional notes but without genuine chaos. When investigators first arrived at the property on May 2 to begin their search for Lily and Jack Sullivan, nothing immediately appeared suspicious about the home's interior. It looked like a typical family residence with the normal clutter of daily life. Toys scattered across the living room floor. Dishes stacked in the kitchen sink. Laundry piled in baskets waiting to be folded. But as the investigation progressed and forensic specialists began their methodical examination of every room, every surface, every corner of that house, a very different picture began to emerge. A picture painted in blood that someone had desperately tried to erase. Luminol testing, a chemical process that causes blood to fluoresce under ultraviolet light even after it has been cleaned or wiped away, revealed traces that told a horrifying story. In Jack's bedroom, the room where the 4-year-old boy supposedly slept peacefully on the night of May 1, luminol revealed blood spatter patterns on the wall near his bed and on the carpet beside it. Not massive amounts that would indicate a violent struggle or immediate catastrophic injury, but enough to suggest that bleeding had occurred in that space. Someone had cleaned it thoroughly, scrubbed it intensively, but forensic science is difficult to fool completely. Blood leaves traces that persist even after aggressive cleaning efforts. The bathroom that Lily and Jack used showed similar findings. Luminol revealed blood traces in the bathtub, on the tile floor, around the base of the sink. Again, not pools of blood that would suggest a massacre, but evidence that blood had been present and that someone had worked hard to remove every visible sign of it. These locations are particularly significant when you consider the normal routines of the household. Malia was the parent who handled all the bedtime activities. She was the one who bathed the children. She was the one who put them to bed. She would have been in both of those locations regularly as part of normal parenting duties, which means she would have had opportunity to harm them in those spaces without anyone thinking it was strange that she was there. When forensic specialists examined cleaning supplies found in various locations throughout the house, they discovered patterns that raised immediate red flags. Multiple bottles of industrial-strength bleach that purchase records showed had been bought recently were now nearly empty. The household's normal cleaning patterns, based on interviews with family members and neighbors, didn't account for such extensive bleach usage in such a short period. Packages of heavy-duty trash bags showed depletion rates that didn't match the family's typical garbage output. Someone had been using far more trash bags than normal household waste would require. Rubber gloves found under the kitchen sink showed chemical residue on both the interior and exterior surfaces, consistent with someone wearing them while handling harsh cleaning chemicals for extended periods. The pattern of residue and wear suggested recent, intensive use rather than occasional household cleaning. When these gloves were tested, they showed microscopic traces of blood mixed with bleach on the fingertips, indicating they had been used to clean up biological material with chemical agents. Analysis of materials recovered from the outdoor trash receptacles revealed even more disturbing evidence. Buried beneath regular household garbage, investigators found cleaning rags and paper towels that showed heavy concentrations of bleach and other cleaning chemicals. When these materials were tested, they revealed minute traces of blood that had survived the cleaning process. The DNA analysis of these trace amounts is still ongoing, a slow and painstaking process that requires extreme care and precision. But preliminary results suggest the blood may belong to one of the missing children, though definitive confirmation is still pending. Money has a way of revealing truth when words hide it. Financial records don't lie the way people do. They create paper trails that can't be explained away with tears or claims of confused memory. In the 2 weeks leading up to May 2nd, someone withdrew $2,300 in cash from bank accounts connected to the household. For a family already drowning in debt, already struggling to pay basic bills and keep food on the table, this represented an enormous amount of money to suddenly pull out in untraceable cash. Investigators initially focused on these withdrawals as evidence of Daniel Martell's guilt, assuming he must have taken the money to fund whatever dark plan he was executing. But meticulous analysis of banking records and security footage revealed something that fundamentally changed that assumption. The withdrawals came from Malia Brooks Murray's personal checking account. Yes, Daniel technically had access to it as her partner, but the actual withdrawals were made using Malia's debit card at ATM machines located near her workplace. Not near their home. Not at random locations around town. Specifically at ATMs within walking distance of the building where Malia worked her day shift. When investigators obtained her complete work schedule from her employer and cross-referenced it with the exact timestamps on the ATM transactions, the pattern became unmistakable. Every single large cash withdrawal occurred during Malia's lunch breaks or during gaps in her shift when she would have been free to leave the building. Security footage from her workplace parking lot, obtained through court order, confirmed what the timestamps already suggested. Multiple recordings showed Malia leaving the building during the exact times when withdrawals were being made at nearby ATMs. She walked out alone, headed in the direction where those machines were located, and returned 15 or 20 minutes later. She made these withdrawals herself. She personally took out over $2,300 in cash during those 2 critical weeks before her children disappeared. When confronted with this evidence during formal police interviews, she initially tried to claim that Daniel must have used her card, that he must have made the withdrawals. But the timeline and the security footage made that explanation impossible to maintain. If you haven't subscribed yet, now is the time. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications because we're about to reveal exactly what Malia was buying with all that cash. The evidence is shocking and it points directly at premeditation. Make sure you're following along by subscribing right now. So where did all that money go? What was Malia Brooks Murray buying with $2,300 in untraceable cash? Investigators developed a theory based on careful analysis of retail transaction records from stores in the area. In the days before the children disappeared, multiple stores reported cash purchases of unusual combinations of items. Industrial-strength bleach bought in quantities far exceeding normal household needs. Heavy-duty contractor-grade trash bags, the kind designed for construction debris and serious cleanup jobs. Multiple boxes of rubber gloves. Industrial air fresheners designed to eliminate strong odors from large spaces. Malia didn't make these purchases all at once from a single location, which would have been memorable to store employees and might have raised immediate suspicion. Instead, she deliberately spread them across different retailers over several days. A few bottles of bleach here. Some trash bags there. Gloves from another store entirely. Each individual transaction seemed unremarkable and mundane when viewed in isolation. Just another customer buying cleaning supplies for household chores. But when investigators compiled all the purchases they could identify and verify through transaction records and witness interviews, the pattern became clear and deeply disturbing. One store employee specifically remembered Malia because she paid cash for an unusually large purchase that struck them as odd at the time. Several large bottles of industrial-strength bleach. Multiple boxes of heavy-duty trash bags. The employee thought it was unusual enough to mention to their manager, and unusual enough to remember clearly when investigators came asking questions weeks later with photographs. When shown pictures of Malia, the employee confirmed without hesitation that she was the woman who had made that memorable cash purchase. Understanding what happened to Lily and Jack Sullivan requires understanding who Malia Brooks Murray really is beneath the mask she shows the world. Her past reveals patterns that should have been warning signs, a history of instability and resentment toward the very children she now claims to desperately miss. Court records obtained by investigators show something that hasn't been widely reported and that Malia has worked hard to keep hidden from public scrutiny. Approximately 2 years before her children disappeared, she lost custody of them entirely. Lily and Jack were removed from her care by Child Protective Services and placed with Malia's mother, Cindy Murray, for a period of 4 months while Malia was supposed to be addressing what court documents vaguely describe as personal issues requiring intervention and treatment. The specific nature of these issues remains sealed by the court, protected by privacy laws designed to shield families from public exposure during child welfare proceedings. But sources extremely close to the case have suggested the removal involved serious concerns about her mental stability and her ability to safely care for young children. The language in the sealed documents reportedly references mental health crises and possible substance use problems that had reached a point where authorities felt the children were at risk in her care. During the 4-month period when her mother had custody, when Malia was supposed to be working intensively on whatever problems had led to the removal, family members reported something disturbing. She showed remarkably little urgency about getting her children back. She missed scheduled visitation appointments with Lily and Jack. She didn't complete required counseling programs in the expected timeframe. She seemed more focused on her developing relationship with Daniel Martell, which was just beginning during this period, than on doing the necessary work to reunite with her children. When she finally did regain custody after completing the bare minimum requirements to satisfy the court, family members expressed private concerns among themselves about whether she was truly ready. Her mother Cindy reportedly told other relatives that she worried deeply about Malia's emotional state and whether she was genuinely equipped to handle the constant stress and demands of parenting 2 energetic young children. Medical records obtained through court orders paint an even more troubling picture of a woman struggling with demons she refused to properly address. Documentation shows Malia has been diagnosed with major depression and generalized anxiety disorder at various points over the past decade. She's been prescribed multiple psychotropic medications over the years, antidepressants and anti-anxiety medications meant to stabilize her moods and help her cope with daily stressors. But prescription records and pharmacy data reveal a pattern of noncompliance. She frequently allowed prescriptions to lapse without refilling them, going months at a time without the medications doctors had determined she needed. More significantly, detailed notes in her medical files from approximately 3 years ago show a doctor expressing explicit written concern about Malia's emotional state and her ability to cope with motherhood. The physician's notes describe Malia presenting for an appointment in what was characterized as significant distress. She expressed feelings of being completely overwhelmed by parenting responsibilities. She admitted to having intrusive thoughts about escaping her life, about what it would be like if she didn't have the burden of caring for children. The doctor noted that Malia seemed to view Lily and Jack more as obstacles than as sources of joy, which concerned the physician enough to document it carefully and to strongly recommend ongoing counseling and possible medication adjustments. There's no indication in subsequent medical records that Malia followed through with either recommendation. She stopped seeing that particular doctor shortly after that appointment and never established regular care with another physician. Whatever mental health issues she was experiencing, whatever dark thoughts were consuming her, she wasn't addressing them through proper treatment channels. She was letting them fester and grow in the darkness of her mind. Family members have revealed statements Malia made repeatedly in the year before the children disappeared, statements that in retrospect sound like warnings of what was coming. Her mother Cindy told investigators that Malia said on multiple occasions that she wasn't cut out to be a mother, that she'd made a terrible mistake having children when she was so young and unprepared, that she felt permanently trapped by responsibilities she couldn't handle and never truly wanted. 5 days before Lily and Jack Sullivan vanished, Malia Brooks Murray sent a text message that investigators now believe reveals her true intentions. The message was sent to Daniel Martell on April 27 at 8:43 in the evening, recovered from both their phones during forensic examination of their digital devices. The words she typed that night were chilling in their clarity and horrifying in their implication. She wrote about how overwhelmed she felt, how impossible their situation had become, how she couldn't continue living the way they were living. Then she asked a question that stopped investigators cold when they first read it. What if they just weren't here anymore? What if it was just the three of us, just you and me and Meadow? Wouldn't that be so much easier? Wouldn't our lives be so much better? When Daniel responded asking what exactly she meant by that statement, what she was suggesting with those words, Malia claimed she was just fantasizing about the possibility of Cody Sullivan somehow taking the children and giving them what she called a better life elsewhere. But investigators don't believe that explanation for a second. They believe she was testing Daniel's reaction to the idea of the children being permanently gone from their lives. She was gauging whether he would object strongly or whether he might be open to whatever dark plan was already forming in her mind. She was seeing if he would be an obstacle to what she wanted to do or if he might tacitly accept it. This wasn't the only message revealing her state of mind in the weeks before the disappearance. Text conversations recovered from her phone show a pattern of Malia expressing resentment about her role as mother, frustration about being tied down by children she never really wanted, fantasies about starting over with a clean slate. In one exchange from mid-April, she told Daniel that Lily and Jack represented her past, a failed relationship with Cody Sullivan that she desperately wanted to erase and forget. She said she wished she could rewind time and make different choices, live the life she wanted without the burden of responsibilities that had trapped her before she was ready. Internet search history extracted from Malia's phone and from computers in the household reveals even more damning evidence of premeditation. Throughout March and April, the 2 months immediately before the children disappeared, her searches focused obsessively on ways to give up parental rights. How to voluntarily terminate parental rights in Nova Scotia. Whether it's possible to give up older children for adoption. What happens if you surrender kids to Child Protective Services and say you can't care for them anymore? The legal processes for relinquishing custody permanently. She was actively researching ways to get rid of her children through legitimate channels. But those processes are complicated and involve extensive scrutiny from authorities. They take considerable time and require navigating bureaucratic systems. They would have required Malia to admit publicly that she didn't want her children, to subject herself to judgment and criticism, to create a permanent public record of her rejection of Lily and Jack. Perhaps she realized that going through official channels would expose her to the condemnation she feared. Perhaps she decided that a more permanent solution was necessary. A solution where the children would be gone forever, but she could play the role of grieving mother and receive sympathy instead of judgment. From the moment Malia Brooks Murray first appeared before news cameras on May 2, something felt wrong to those trained to recognize genuine emotion versus calculated performance. Camera operators, journalists, and production assistants who were present during her media appearances began noticing patterns that deeply disturbed them. Her tears seemed to flow only when cameras were actively rolling and capturing footage. The moment a cameraman signaled they were stopping to change batteries or adjust equipment, Malia's crying would stop almost instantly. She would pull out her phone and scroll through messages. She would check her appearance in a compact mirror and touch up her makeup. She would chat with people standing nearby in a completely normal tone of voice, discussing mundane topics like the weather or asking if anyone had coffee available. Then, when cameras started rolling again and the red recording light came back on, the tears would return right on cue. Her voice would crack with emotion. Her hands would tremble as she clutched photographs of her missing children. She would deliver heartfelt pleas for their safe return that hit every expected emotional note. It was a performance polished enough to fool casual observers but obvious enough to raise serious questions among professionals who had covered many genuine tragedies and knew what real grief looked like. Real grief doesn't follow a script. It doesn't turn on and off based on whether cameras are recording. It overwhelms people at unexpected moments and subsides at others without any predictable pattern. One of the most telling behavioral indicators that investigators noted was Malia's pattern of speaking about Lily and Jack in past tense before catching herself and awkwardly correcting to present tense. During interviews, she would say things like Lily was such a happy child before pausing and adding I mean is such a happy child. Jack loved dinosaurs more than anything, then quickly correcting to loves dinosaurs. These verbal slips are psychologically significant. They occur when someone's subconscious mind has already processed and accepted that the person being discussed is gone, is dead, no longer exists in the present. The conscious mind tries to maintain the fiction that they're still alive for the benefit of listeners, but the subconscious truth leaks out in language patterns. Parents of genuinely missing children almost never make this mistake, especially not repeatedly in the early days and weeks after disappearance. Their entire being is focused on hope and belief that their child is still out there somewhere, still alive, still coming home. They cling desperately to present tense because accepting past tense means accepting the worst possible outcome. But Malia's language patterns suggested something very different. They suggested she already knew her children weren't coming back because she was the one who had ensured they never would. If you're still watching but haven't hit subscribe, do it right now. We need your support to keep bringing you the truth about cases like this. Subscribe to the Case Files Collective, smash that like button, and tell me in the comments what you think about Malia's behavior. Does she seem guilty to you? Drop your thoughts below. Volunteer searchers who participated in the massive search operations conducted during the days following the disappearance reported behavior from Malia that struck them as distinctly odd. She would participate in searches for brief periods, perhaps an hour or two, walking through wooded areas calling the children's names alongside dozens of volunteers. But then she would return to the house claiming she was too emotionally upset to continue. Other parents of missing children typically can't stop searching. They push themselves until they physically collapse from exhaustion. They can't rest or eat or think about anything except finding their child. But Malia seemed to have limited endurance for the effort and appeared more interested in returning home and being away from the search areas. One volunteer described approaching Malia late on May 2 to offer emotional support and words of encouragement and being genuinely shocked by what she saw. She expected to encounter a mother who had been crying for hours, whose face would be swollen and red from constant tears. But Malia's eye makeup was barely smudged. Her eyes were clear and bright. There was no physical evidence of the hours of devastated crying you would expect from a mother whose children had just vanished. Polygraph examinations are controversial in the legal world. Courts in Canada don't allow them as admissible evidence because the science behind them remains debated and their reliability questioned by many experts. But from an investigative perspective, polygraphs serve a valuable purpose. They measure physiological responses that people can't consciously control when they're lying. Heart rate, blood pressure, respiration patterns, skin conductivity. When someone tells the truth, these measurements remain relatively stable. When someone lies, especially about something significant and emotionally charged, their body betrays them even if their words don't. When investigators asked Malia Brooks Murray to submit to a polygraph examination, she initially hesitated before eventually agreeing. The examination took place in a controlled environment with an experienced examiner who has conducted thousands of these tests over a career spanning decades. The examiner asked carefully crafted questions designed to establish baseline responses and then probe the critical issues at the heart of the investigation. Did you harm Lily in any way? Did you harm Jack in any way? Do you know where Lily and Jack are right now? Are you lying to us about what happened on the morning of May 2nd? On every single key question, Malia showed strong physiological indicators of deception. Her heart rate spiked. Her blood pressure elevated. Her breathing became irregular. Her skin conductivity changed dramatically. The patterns were unmistakable to the trained examiner reviewing the data. This wasn't someone telling the truth and remaining calm because they had nothing to hide. This was someone lying and experiencing the physiological stress that accompanies significant deception. The examiner concluded in the written report that Malia Brooks Murray was clearly and definitively being deceptive about her knowledge of and involvement in her children's disappearance. When confronted with these polygraph results during a subsequent interview, Malia's reaction told investigators everything they needed to know. An innocent person confronted with test results suggesting deception would typically respond with confusion and concern. They would want to understand why the machine indicated they were lying when they knew they were telling the truth. They would ask to take the test again. They would cooperate fully to clear their name and eliminate themselves as suspects. But that's not how Malia responded at all. She became immediately defensive and angry. She claimed the entire examination was rigged and unfair. She accused the examiner of being biased against mothers and deliberately manipulating the results to make her look guilty. She insisted that polygraphs aren't scientifically reliable anyway and that the results prove nothing. While it's technically true that polygraph results aren't legally admissible in court, her angry defensive reaction rather than concerned confusion was noted by investigators as yet another indicator of guilt. Innocent people don't lash out when given opportunities to prove their innocence. Guilty people do exactly that because they know the truth and they know they've been caught. Investigators believe that Malia is psychologically close to breaking after 7 months of maintaining elaborate lies and living with the weight of what she's done. The stress of constantly monitoring every word she says, every emotion she displays, every detail of her fabricated timeline is clearly wearing on her. She's made mistakes and contradicted earlier statements. She's shown cracks in the carefully constructed facade. Eventually, they believe, the accumulated pressure will become unbearable and she'll finally confess to what happened to Lily and Jack Sullivan. 7 months have passed since Lily and Jack Sullivan vanished from their Nova Scotia home on May 2, 2025. 7 months of investigation, speculation, and searching for answers that remain frustratingly out of reach. The massive ground searches that mobilized hundreds of volunteers in the days and weeks following the disappearance found nothing. No clothing. No belongings. No trace of the children in the dense forest surrounding the property. Cadaver dogs brought in from specialized units showed interest in certain areas but never made definitive alerts that would indicate the presence of human remains. If bodies were hidden somewhere on that vast property or in the surrounding wilderness, they were hidden well enough that extensive professional searches failed to locate them. No charges have been filed against anyone in connection with the disappearance. Malia Brooks Murray continues to maintain her absolute innocence, insisting that her children wandered off into the wilderness and that she had nothing whatsoever to do with their vanishing. She continues to live her life, continues to care for baby Meadow, continues to present herself to the world as a grieving mother desperately hoping for the safe return of her missing children. But investigators assigned to this case believe they know the truth even if they cannot yet prove it to the standard required for criminal prosecution. The circumstantial evidence against Malia is overwhelming when viewed in totality. The cash withdrawals she made and lied about. The cleaning supplies purchased in suspicious quantities and patterns. The forensic evidence of blood in locations only she regularly accessed. The timeline that gave her opportunity during critical unsupervised periods. The internet searches about terminating parental rights. The text messages expressing desire for the children to be gone. The failed polygraph examination. The performance of grief that fooled casual observers but not trained investigators. The past history of losing custody and expressing resentment about motherhood. Each individual piece might be explained away in isolation, but together they paint a damning picture of guilt. DNA testing on the blood traces found in the house continues slowly through the painstaking forensic process. If that blood is definitively confirmed to belong to Lily or Jack, it becomes extraordinarily difficult for Malia to explain with innocent justifications. Periodic searches for remains continue whenever new information emerges or new areas of interest are identified. If bodies are ever found and recovered, forensic analysis could potentially prove how the children died and provide the definitive evidence prosecutors need to file charges with confidence of conviction. Before we end this investigation, I need you to do something crucial. If you've been following this case and you believe justice needs to be served for Lily and Jack, subscribe to the Case Files Collective right now and turn on all notifications. Share this video with everyone you know who's been following this story. Hit that like button to help push this content to more people who need to understand what really happened. And most importantly, drop a comment below telling me what you think. Do you believe Malia is guilty? What do you think happened to those children? Let's keep this conversation going until justice is finally served. A substantial reward of $150,000 remains available to anyone who provides information leading to finding the children or to criminal charges being filed against whoever is responsible for their disappearance. That's life-changing money for someone who might have information they've been hesitant to share. Anyone with knowledge about what happened to Lily and Jack Sullivan, about where their bodies might be located, about suspicious activities they observed around the time of the disappearance, is urged to contact the Royal Canadian Mounted Police immediately. Tips can be provided anonymously. Callers can remain protected. But the information they provide could be the critical piece that finally allows prosecutors to move forward. The investigation remains active with detectives working every single day to build the case they need. The pressure on Malia continues and will not stop until the complete truth emerges. Whether through confession, through discovery of remains, through breakthrough forensic evidence, or through a witness finally coming forward, the full story will eventually be known. Justice may be delayed, but for two innocent children who deserve so much better, justice will come.